Okay, extended algebra 2. Now you're going to get pushed a little bit. This is the only packet you got. You got 4 problems to do. It says find the dimensions of the shape. You have to find the length and the width of all of these. Okay, that's what your job is. Find the length and the width. Okay, now right now the length is the bottom part. That's x, and then the width is x minus 2. Minus 7, x minus 7. Now, you know the area is 18, so what you're going to do, and this is the first time you've ever done something like this, in this box here, you got to be organized with your work in this unless you want to get really aggravated. You make an equation with it equal to the area, and our area is going to be making 2 parentheses and the length times the width. Now the length here is just x. Okay. Now the width is x minus 7. Okay, so then what you're going to do is do the distributive property. You're going to take x times x off to the side here, and then you're going to take x times negative 7. Just 2 multiplications, x times negative 7. X times x means it's x to the second. X times negative 7 is negative 7x. Okay. Now you drop your equals. You put the x to the second first, followed by your negative 7x, and then 18. Now you have 2 answers you need to find, because you have x to the second. But you have x to the second, you've also got the x in there not to the second. So when that happens, first you need to get it equal to 0 so you can factor the expression on the other side, do your F1, F2. Okay, you're not equal to 0, so you're going to subtract 18. And you wouldn't subtract it from x squared or 7x, you just put it behind everything. So my equation is now 1x to the second minus 7x minus 18 equals 0. Now I put an implied 1 in front of the x, okay? And I can see now that there's 3 terms. So I look up the GCF. And all these today, 1, 7, and 18 are only in the first row. And then you're going to do your table. You don't need an x because you can't. 18 doesn't have it. You also don't take a negative. So if it's just plain old 1, we don't do it. Now I go A, B, and C. So I'm going to find the AC product, which is fairly easy because A is just a 1. So it'd be 1 times negative 18. And that's negative 18. Okay, so the 2 factors have to be a positive and a negative, and they have to add to the middle, which is negative 7. So 18 divided by 1, that's 18. Now if you add those, 1 plus negative 18, that's negative 17. That isn't going to work. We need negative 7. 18 divided by 2 is 9. Add those. And 2 plus negative 9 is indeed going to be negative 7. Now you get a little break today because the A is always going to be a 1, okay? If A is a 1x to the second, you can cross out the 1 and you just need 2 parentheses, okay? So you go x and then plus 2 minus 9. So you don't need a second grouping. Was no GCF. Now I come up here where I left off before I made my boxes, and I just go next to this problem, put equals 0, and I'm rewriting that as x plus 2 times x minus 9. Okay, now set each one equal to 0, F1, F2. So x plus 2 could equal 0, or x minus 9 could equal 0. Well, you're going to minus 2. You don't have to even divide here because you don't have a number in front of the x. You got negative 2. There's your first answer. plus 9, x equals 9. That's the second. Now you take the positive answer, I'm going to repeat that 3 times. Take the positive answer up here, get rid of your x's, and put that positive answer you just got right there. So we got 9 for the length, and then 9 minus 7 is 2, so it's 9 by 2. You just circle 9 by 2. That's the dimensions. 9 times 2 is 18, which should match up to what the area is. Okay, so again, length times width, do your distribution. You're going to need to move that over, and you do your GCF table. But then you set each of your factors equal to 0 and get the answers. Okay, next one. Okay, I got to find the dimensions. Blank times blank. This is the length, this is the width. So our length has an x plus 6, and the width has an x minus 2. You got to solve for x so you can find what numbers those actually are to multiply it to an area of 128. So you set it equal to 128 because that is your area of a rectangle. Okay, so your length is x plus 6. Your width is x minus 2. Now you do the FOIL method. You go x times x, back to the x times negative 2. Then I take 6 times x, and I take 6 times negative 2. So that's x to the second. This is negative 2x. This is 6x. These two are like terms. We will add those together. That's negative 12. So over here, we're still equal to 128, and we have x to the second. You can add those. You take negative 2 plus 6, that's 4. It's 4x. A lot of people will add them and get 4, and then they'll put 4x to the second. No, the x to the second's a multiplication operation thing. This is an addition, so we keep them both at x. Then minus 12. Okay, now you know the equation has 2 answers. But due to the fact that you got x to the second and the x not to the second, you are going to need this equation equal to 0 so you can write the one side in factored form. You're not equal to 0, so you need to minus the 128, and that can go with the negative 12. That gives us x to the second plus 4x. And then I take negative 12 minus 148. I got negative 12 minus 128, my bad. Negative 140. Now, remember, I put the implied 1 right there. Having a 1 there means once I do my chart, I just need 2 parentheses because it's x and x. So GCF and table. GCF for all these today is 1, so we're not going to do it. If you don't even want to draw that box, that's fine, but then we have to go to the table. So I go A, B, C, and I find the AC product. I take positive 1 times negative 140. It's 140, it's going to be a negative. Usually when you're solving application problems, it's a negative, so you have a positive and a negative, and you got to add. You got to know where to stop. You're going to stop when you get 2 factors that add to positive 4. So if I divide this by 1, it's 140. Now if I add those, that's negative 139. That ain't even close. Positive, negative. 140 divided by 2, okay, is 70. Add them. It's negative 68. That isn't going to work. Now, if I put a 3 there, 140 divided by 3 was a decimal. So I go to 4. Okay, 4 goes with 35, so I put positive, negative, 4, and 35. Then I add those together. It's negative 31. Okay, that isn't going to work. Okay, after 4 comes 5. 5 and 28. So 5 worked. I got 28. But if you add those, it's negative 23. Remember, it's got to be 4. 140 divided by 6 is a decimal. Divide by 7, you get 20. Okay, if I add 7 plus negative 20, that's negative 13. I got to get positive 4. Now I divide by 8 decimal. The next number would be 9 decimal. 140 divided by 10 is 14. So I put 10, positive 10, negative 14. Now I add 10 to negative 14. Well, that's negative 4. Well, now I got the right number. Okay, so I'm going to use these two, but it's the wrong sign. Okay, so I make that positive 14 and negative 10. Now it's right. Now your A, go look all the way up, there's a 1x to the second. Well, you can ditch the 1, okay? Ditch it up here. And you can rewrite this as x minus 10 times x plus 14. You don't need the 4 parentheses. Okay, so what I've essentially done is rewritten that as x minus 10 times x plus 14. Okay, so you got F1, F2. So x minus 10 could equal 0, x plus 14 could equal 0. So we plus 10 to both sides, that's 10. You subtract 14 from both sides, and that's negative 14. Take the positive answer 10 up here. 10 and 10. What's 10 plus 6? That would be 16. 10 minus 2 would be 8. And if you take 16, and that's your answer, 16 by 8, okay? Don't multiply them and say it's 128. I know that, okay? I just don't know what the dimensions are. Okay, now a triangle, what you're going to do with a triangle, you're going to do it the same way you did a rectangle. You're going to make it into a rectangle. You can do that. As long as you take the area and times it by 2. That was a 31.5. I'm going to multiply it by 2. And that's 63. So now it's a rectangle problem. And I'm going to figure out the dimensions. So the length is x plus 4. The width is x plus 2. I got to find out what numbers these actually are. Okay, so again, same idea. The length times width is your area, but the area is 63. So you've got x plus 4, then you got x plus 2. Now you need to multiply that out, okay? So you take x times x, you take x times 2, you take 4 times x, and you take 4 times 2. So this is x to the second, this is 2x, this is 4x, and these will be added, and this is 8. So you have x to the second plus 6x plus 8 equals 63. So you have to come up with the two answers in that quadratic equation right there. It's called a quadratic equation with when x to the second. But you also got that and that, x second and the x not to the second. So you have to have the equation equal to 0 so you can factor one side and rewrite it. You're not equal to 0, so you subtract 63, and then you can subtract that from the 8 column. So now that takes us to x to the second plus 6x, and then I take 8 minus 63. It's negative 55 equals 0. Okay. There's 3 terms, so this would be the GCF, even though you know it's 1. Okay. 1, 6, whenever 1's one of the numbers you look at, the only place 1 is in the first row. You don't need x because that doesn't have it. You don't need negative. Okay, so you take 1 times negative 55. It's going to be negative 55. So again, it's a positive times a negative. It has to add then to get to positive 6. That's what you know about it. Divide by 1, you get 55. You add those, it's negative 54. 55 divided by 2 is a decimal. 55 divided by 3, a decimal. If it's a decimal, you don't write it. Divide by 4 is a decimal. Divide by 5, you get 11. Now add those, 5 plus negative 11. That's negative 6. We need positive 6, which I can get if I just make the 11 positive and the 5 negative. Now negative 5 plus 11 is positive 6. Now again, your a up there is simply x squared with a 1 in front of it. Well, you can cross out the 1, okay, if it's a 1, and you can just rewrite that as x minus 5 times x plus 11. Okay, now I'm going to go right next to this, put equals 0, and just rewrite that side as x minus 5, x plus 11. This is the same thing as this. I'm just rewriting it because now I can solve it. Makes it easier to solve. That's the point. It simplifies it. So x minus 5 could equal 0. X plus 11 equals 0. So add 5. That's 5. Take away 11. You get negative 11. Take the positive answer to the top. And we take 5 plus 4, which is 9, and 5 plus 2 is 7. It's 9 by 7. 9 times 7 is 63. Now, since it was a triangle, it would be 63 divided by 2 if you're going back to that. Okay, last one. You have another triangle. Make it into a rectangle. You have to go with that side. And you can simply take your area times 2 now because you just made a bigger shape. That's why you'd expand it. You'd multiply it by 2. Now it's 65. So the area I'm looking for is 65. So you got x plus 8 for your length. And the width is just x. So equals 65. And you've got x plus 8, and you've got x. Well, this isn't really a FOIL. This is just distributed property. You take x times x, and you take x times 8. That's x to the second, and that's 8x. Nothing gets combined on a problem like that. You just put x to the second plus 8x. 65. Okay, you got to find the two answers. Again, with that and that, you need this equal to 0 so you can factor. Right now, I can't have this 65 here, so I subtract 65. And that doesn't go in this column or this column, so it's going to go behind it. Okay, and now I have x to the second plus 8x minus 65 equals 0. Remember, we're looking to rewrite that. So I'm going to factor it. 3 terms with an a of 1. So remember, if I do get the 3 terms to factor, the a is just a 1. That can be discarded. GCF 1. So I find my AC product. That would be 1 times negative 65. That's negative 65, so we have a positive times a negative. If you divide by 1, you get 65. You're trying to add to get to positive 8. That's nowhere close. 65 divided by 2 is a decimal. 65 divided by 3 is a decimal. 65 divided by 4 is a decimal. Divided by 5, you get 13. So positive, negative, 5, 13. Then add them. It's got to be positive 8. So we take 5 plus negative 13. Well, I got negative 8. So to make it positive 8, you go plus on the 13 and negative on the 5. Now that adds to positive 8. Now again, the a is a 1. When it's a 1, you can ditch it, and that means you can rewrite that as x minus 5 times x plus 13. Any other number but a 1, you're going to use the little 4 parentheses trick. So I'm going to go up here and rewrite it. I now know I have x minus 5, x plus 3. Okay, F1, F2. So x minus 5 could equal 0. X plus 3 could equal 0. So you plus 5, that's 5. You don't have to divide today on this part. And then that's a 13, my bad. Negative 13. Okay, your positive answer comes up here. 5 and 5. And you're going to have 13 by 5, which is 65. Okay, I tell you what, you can cross out the last problem. You don't have to do that one. That one's hard. Number 4, the T chart takes forever. You don't have to do number 4. Just 1 through 3.